Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I am joined by Miss Loni and Miss Lauren today. How are you, ladies?
Howdy, guys.
Hi.
All right, so I'm going to go over just a few quick webinar reminders. I do want to make sure that everybody has their supplies ready to go with them today. Okay, so I want to remind everyone that you are automatically muted. We can't hear you or see you, but don't worry, you can hear and see us. If for any reason you have a question, please use the chat box on the right side of your screen. If you raise our hand, we're not going to be able to hear you ask your question. Okay. I will be able to see your question, and when appropriate, I will ask Miss Lauren and Miss Lonnie, whoever the question is directed to. Today, you are joining us for Wildlife in Watercolor, and we will be talking about peacocks and parrots. Okay. You can join us for some upcoming webinars that we have. Our next one is on Tuesday, September 8th, where we're going to be reading Diggy the Dog Explores Friendship, written by Adam Lovelace. And after that, you can join us for more Wildlife in Watercolor, where we're talking about lizards. If for any reason you miss this webinar, it is recorded, so you can go back and visit it anytime you get it tomorrow. And as a reminder, if you want to share our artwork with us, you can go ahead and use this link to submit it, and I will put it in the chat box so you have access to it. So without further ado, take it away, Miss Lonnie and Miss Lauren.
Hey, guys. Hi, Miss Lauren. How are
Hi,
you?
good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited. I'm really excited to sort of talk to you guys and see you guys can check out the exciting stuff that we're working on today. Before we get started, I wanted to show you all the supplies that you need to get this going. You should have received a template like this when you registered. So we're going to go ahead and cut that out in a few minutes. We're doing two birds today. We are doing a peacock and a parrot. And so as you can see, this is the parrot body. This is the peacock, and this is another part of the peacock that we're going to use. So just a heads up about that. Another reminder, please use tougher paper. I mean, you can use regular printable paper, but definitely using paper that can actually take on the paint and the water, super important for this. So I highly recommend using cardstock or actually watercolor paper. But if you don't have it, no worries, not a big deal. Another thing is our cool watercolors. So I really like these watercolors. You can get them on Amazon, you can get them on all kinds of places. And what I like about it is it gives you a really great range of colors. And if you have the little one, the regular elementary one, no problem. You can go ahead and make a really great design with that. But these are actually really great deals. So I highly recommend these. And I really love these watercolor pens. I've been using them for every single episode that we've had. And so what's great about them is they have different sizes. So it's like you can kind of see how fine this one is, right? If I put it right up against this, it's really easy to use. So this one came with a pack of 3. So it's like really fine, medium, and then really fat. So I really like that. And then finally, we have just a pair of scissors that you need and a tissue. And the reason you have a tissue is just in case you need to wipe down and move on to a new color. So it's pretty basic. So let me go ahead and get started. And I know that, yeah.
I think you're still sharing your computer screen.
Oh.
Thank you.
No worries. All right, awesome. So before we get started, we're gonna go ahead and cut out these pieces. And if you guys have been here before, you know that when we cut out the pieces, we like to cut them right against the edge of the paper, like that. So that's really easy to cut out. So some of my friends, I'm sure, have already cut out the pieces. If you've been here before, it's a lot easier to kind of get these started with me already. And so this piece is actually the peacock piece. And Miss Lauren, I know that we're talking about peacocks and parrots, and are they actually local to our neighborhood?
That's a great question. I mean, they live in our neighborhoods for sure, but they didn't originally come from here. Both peafowl and parrots are what's called non-native or introduced species, which basically just means that they came from somewhere else. They weren't evolved to live here, you know, thousands or even millions of years ago. Um, some of these non-native species are actually really beneficial still to our environment, such as like honeybees, that like are great pollinators, and so the peafowl and the parrots both do have become sort of a weirdly important role in our ecosystems as far as kind of the niche that they are occupying. So we'll talk a little bit about that today too.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of us just think that since they're here, that they just were always here. And I know that we've talked about other animals that were brought here as opposed to just kind of being a part of this ecosystem, like you said. So I'm really interested to hear more about that. But before we do that, so we have our stencils here. So what I would say is you're going to grab your parrot stencil, and with a pencil, you're just going to outline it. You can outline it wherever you want, wherever you'd like on your paper. So I'm just going to put him right in the dead center just because he seems like he's a very dead center type of bird with the shape that I kind of brought in here. So we're going to go ahead and trace our parrot like so. Like that. And then really quickly, I did is if you look really closely at this tracing that I did, I'm actually going to draw a line going from the bottom to the top of kind of where his head cuts off. And that's going to give us the line where his beak starts and his face begins. And then we're going to take another line like so, and I'm going to make them a little darker so you guys can see that there. And then what we're going to do is from here, we're going to take the bottom of his mouth and we're going to try to just kind of do a little box shape like that. And that kind of separates his real face to the actual plumage that starts down here. And then finally, we're just going to do like a leaf shape right here because they have a kind of a little leaf shape when you want to see their little wings. So it looks like that. And then I like to here draw a line where the plumage starts. So I'll outline it like that. So I know I did that really quickly. So if you guys want to take a minute and do that yourselves, and I'll kind of bring it up, you can kind of see what I did for my friends who want to work on that, just like that. So then next we are going to take our awesome peacock. And I like my peacock because it's just going to be all about, these are called, what are they called again, Miss Lauren? Islets?
The eyes, they're called eye spots.
Eye spots, cool. So I'm gonna move my parrot. Gonna take the bird. Now you can put him anywhere, and you can actually finish the rest of his body if you want. But because we are trying to make this a relatively quick webinar on peacocks and parrots, we could go on and on with all the details of a peacock, and they're so beautiful, Miss Lauren, and they have like so much stuff going on with them. So we're gonna try our best to get as much details as possible. So it's gonna look like that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and take this piece and I'm gonna lay them kind of, you can randomly lay them where you want, but I imagine that this peacock's plumage is kind of going from left to right. You can always flip it the other way. You can do it right in the center if you'd like to. But I'm gonna go ahead and just pick this place for this one, just like that. And don't worry if you make mistakes, you can always redo. And that's what's really great about pencils. That's what's really great about art in general, is if you think you messed up, you can always go back and you can always fix it. So I'm gonna put 3, just like that. There. So I kind of wanted to get the outlines out before we started learning from Miss Lauren about awesome parrots and peacocks, just like that. So there's your outlines. So actually I'm going to start with the more difficult one today, just because it takes a little bit longer and I want my friends to be able to have a little time with it. So Miss Lauren, what colors are peacocks usually?
Well, the males are the ones that are brightly colored. So those are the greens and the blues and some purples, and they just kind of look iridescent, or like holographic.
Awesome.
And the females like with a lot of birds, the females are more dull colored. They're usually kind of brown, and they don't need to use all of their energy to create beautiful colors, because it's actually up to the males to impress the females, not the other way around in the bird world. So that's why the male peacocks have their long tails. They're actually called trains, kind of like a wedding dress has a train. So the peacocks have a train too, and they kind of have a look all of their own. Each peacock has its own, pattern of different kinds of eye spots that are scattered all across their plumage. And when the male is trying to attract the female or court her, he usually spreads out his tail feathers, kind of like what you're drawing, and it's completely fanned out. And he's trying to show the girl how beautiful it is, or the female how beautiful it is. And what they do is they kind of rattle them and excuse me, and make kind of like a rattling noise with it, and do kind of like a little dance for them. If any of you guys have ever been to the LA Zoo, you might have seen Kevin, the peacock that lives there, and he'll sometimes just stand in the middle of a pathway and just show off his whole tail, and kind of turns halfway back and forth just to like show everyone how beautiful he is. And it's kind of like a revolving door. You have to kind of time it right to get by him. But it's pretty fun to watch. Also, if you guys are local to Pasadena area and have ever been to the Arboretum,
Yes.
that is where a lot of the peafowl in Southern California actually originated. And do you want to hear the story of where they came from, Loni?
Yes, Miss Lauren, before you do that though, I totally forgot to tell my friends to don't forget to add your little eyeball here. So I'm going to do a leaf shape just like that. And then I'm just going to add this little bill part here, just so we know that we're going to break that little breakaway, so we can add color, and then a little turn there. So yeah, tell us the story, Miss Lauren.
So basically, they trace back to just a few of the peafowl that the famous Lucky Baldwin picked up on a trip to India around the late 1800s, 1880-ish. And if you guys have ever been to Lucky Baldwin's, the pub, or you've seen the road name, Baldwin Road, or pretty much everywhere in the area, there's signs of the Baldwin family. And they were one of the founders of this area, and he had his big ranch out where the Arboretum is now, was originally his family ranch. And he came out west from Ohio, and he was kind of in search of riches. He came out to California looking for money and success and fame. Investing in a lot of the mining stocks and different lands. He was friends with Wyatt Earp, that famous cowboy from Tombstone, my favorite movie. And he and Lucky Baldwin loved racehorses, and also loved animals. So that's why he brought the peacocks with him as well, because they were kind of a status symbol. Like, if you have peacocks, it means that you have some money, and have some style. And he was very kind of consumed with appearances and style. And so some accounts say that there were probably around 50 originally on his ranch, and now there's hundreds, thousands even, probably across all Southern California, that likely are descendants of those 50 from the ranch. And you know why he chose to bring peacocks besides their beauty?
Why?
He said that they made better guards than watchdogs, and that they killed snakes. So those were the two main reasons that he had peafowl on his ranch. which I thought was
Wow.
pretty funny. Because if you've ever heard a peacock, you know that you come near it and it starts giving off that loud, like cry, and it's pretty, uh, it's pretty
Intense.
alerting, I guess.
Yeah, they're totally intense, and you hear them from far away. They sound like some very interesting wild animal out in the jungle or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
Are they super social, Lauren? Like,
they are fairly social. Males will usually, if they're pretty successful in their like dancing and mating techniques, they'll usually have a couple females in their, group, and so they all lay eggs, and the babies are born what's called precocious, and that just means that they are pretty well developed already when they're hatched, so they already eat on their own and can walk, and they fly pretty quickly. They usually only stay with their parents for a couple of months before
interesting.
going off on their own. Yeah, so but I
I
mean
didn't know
they all
that.
hang out together. What?
I really like that. I never knew the word precocious meant that they were kind of like ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, you could describe kids that way too. Like, you have a pretty precocious kid, it means that they're pretty self-sufficient, right?
Yeah, totally. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Do they
uh,
describe all the birds that way? Like, are a lot of birds precocious in the same aspect, or is this very specific to this bird?
a lot of the land fowl, so like chickens and quail and other birds that are in the same family as the peafowl have precocious babies. A lot of the waterfowl do as well. So you look at like baby ducklings and stuff. Like when they hatch, they pop right up and they're ready to go. They can swim pretty quickly after they're born. But there are definitely some kind of birds, like, you see baby sparrows that fall out of trees. Those are the birds that need a little bit of extra time and extra help, and those wouldn't be called precocious. And same with humans. Human babies are born and they're totally helpless, right, until you're 18 basically. so yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just cool. I just never heard that in that aspect. So like my friends that are listening now understand what precocious can mean, and we all kind of strive to be a little bit more precocious, right, Lauren?
Totally.
No,
Absolutely.
that's really
Yeah.
cool.
That's so
Um,
beautiful, Lonnie. I love it.
thank you. When we see peafowl, oh, you know what? We
Mhm.
didn't really define what peafowl was. Can you define peafowl for my friends who may not have ever heard that before?
Oh yeah, because you probably all have heard the word peacock, but that
Yeah.
only describes the male peafowl. So the female peafowl are called peahens, kind of like chickens. Like I said, they're in the same family. So the female are peahens, the male are peacocks, and if you're talking about all of them together, they're peafowl.
That's so cool. Can you tell us more about their plumage, Lauren, while I work on what are they called again?
Eye spots.
The eye spots. I'm gonna work on the eye spots because they look like eyes, friends. So you're gonna draw a big eyeball right in the middle of your plumage, the feather. So draw 3 eyeballs like this. I'm gonna use this cool green. But what are they for, Lauren?
Well, besides attracting mates, I mean that's definitely one of the biggest reasons that they have them is just for beautiful reasons,
Yeah,
superficial reasons, but also it could be, to sort of confuse predators. The eye spots are pretty intimidating if you don't know that they're not part of a monster. It can look
totally.
pretty scary if you see something coming at you with hundreds of eyes. Um, and so that's another benefit that they have as well. And like I said before, they all have their own unique patterns. So um, generally, the more eye spots and the bigger the tail, the better the chances are for attracting one or many mates. And so the size and the patterns of the tail will help the female choose whether or not she's going to mate with that particular peacock.
So they're all individual. Are they like fingerprints to us, Lauren?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, I'd say so. And they don't really have too many natural predators here because, like I said before, they originally from India and they're not native to Southern California. So really the only I mean, I've seen pictures of them in the streets confronting coyotes, so they don't have a whole lot of fear of our, like, what we think of natural predators as. But they're young. The babies probably yeah, when they're still with the mom, that's when they're most vulnerable. So that's when birds of prey can come and get them, or other coyotes or bobcats or things like that might want to have them as dinner. But when they're adults, they're pretty they can be aggressive. I know I've talked to a lot of people who have experienced peacocks coming and fighting with their car or fighting with their window, because the males, especially during mating season, which is we're coming to the end of mating season right now, but the males will see their reflection in like shiny cars or in windows, and they'll want to fight it. So they don't realize that it's just their own reflection. So it's kind of funny, but the best thing to do in that case, it can be kind of scary for sure, but the best thing to do is get a cover for your car, or just let it be dirty like me, never wash it. Or if it's a window, you can get this special tape that will help not just protect it from peafowls wanting to attack it, but it'll also help other birds that are flying around not accidentally crash into your window, because it's kind of like anti-reflective tape. And there's tons of different styles. You could just look it up, like bird safety tape, if anyone watching is interested in that. And I highly recommend it, because window strikes are one of the main reasons we get birds brought into the shelter. And so it'll also help with the window strikes and with peafowl not realizing that they're just fighting their own reflection.
Yeah, that sounds very helpful actually, because I know that a lot of my friends will go walking in their neighborhoods or go kind of San Marino area or hiking sort of right around the edges of places, and they'll see the peafowl. And if you see peafowl, what are you supposed to do, Lauren? If you're just
I
walking.
mean, if you're just walking around and you see peafowl, take a picture of it. You don't really have to do anything. Yeah, I mean, they're pretty like live and let live. Like they're not gonna come attack you for no reason or anything. They just kind of do their own thing. But if they are causing problems, like living on your roof or hanging out in your yard and you don't want them around, the motion sensing sprinklers are really a good way to keep all kinds of wildlife that's unwanted off of your property. So or just like squirting them with the hose, they really don't like water for some reason. So that's pretty harmless, and it gets your point across, like, hey, I don't want you here. But some people really love having them around, and they don't mind the noise, and they don't mind the droppings. Their droppings are a little bit stinky. But that's just part of landfowl, and waterfowl both have really stinky poop. Like geese, tell you what, it's really not pleasant. So I definitely sympathize with those people.
Totally.
But also just trimming your trees back, because they only will roost. I mean, they can fly very short distances. They can like fly up into trees and stuff, and that's where they'll roost. So if you don't want peafowl roosting on your roof, then you need to cut back any trees that are kind of giving access to that roof, or try and identify any resources that are maybe attractive to the peafowl, because really animals are only going places where they have easy access to resources like food, shelter, and water. So removing or securing those resources in a way that doesn't allow the animal to access them is going to be the only real long-term solution to any sort of nuisance wildlife, including peafowl.
That's a really good point to make, Lauren, because I know that a lot of my friends maybe don't realize that we're responsible as humans to make sure that we're controlling our environments, to make sure that the wildlife are living with us and that we're supporting them. And if they're in places where they shouldn't be, that we need to create these environments so that it's not attracted to them, right? And that's sort of our
Exactly.
responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, because they're considered wildlife. They're free to roam. They don't read street signs, so they don't know where their territory begins and ends, and where our human territory begins and ends. It's kind of all intertwined, right? So
Totally.
they just go wherever there's food, basically. So don't feed the peafowl; they will come back.
Very true. And Lauren, what are I know that they have these like little feathers on the top of their heads. I'm going to draw them right now, but is there a specific reason that we know why they have those little like featherettes? Is there a name for it or anything?
On all birds, any sort of like feathers or things on the top of their head are usually referred to as a crest. And theirs is ornamental, I believe.
They're quite ornamental animals.
They are. They
So
really are.
cool. They
They
are.
have a really pretty little crest, though. I like that.
They are pretty. I really like working with the peacock. I like every time I do this with you, it feels like it just looks different every single time I draw. So I'm just going to finish
Does.
outlining this, you guys. But I kind of like the way the blues are kind of taking over, so I don't want to add too much black. I think I'm going to put a little black in the center of the eyelet, like so. You can fill it in however you'd like. I mean, like Lauren said, every peacock has a different design and different style. A lot of them um, it scares other animals away, which I find is really interesting and totally makes sense because if they've never seen something like that before, and if a peacock, which I've seen, they seem to just be very comfortable, sometimes being quite aggressive. And when they're fanned out like that and they're showing their beautiful plumage and they're doing their little dance, the males, it's really interesting. It's beautiful to see them. They seem very proud of it.
They are. They
Right?
are very proud creatures.
Yeah, totally. And if you've been to the Arboretum, and I went during March or April when they opened it up, which I think it's open now, right? Lauren, you can actually go now and
I think so, yeah.
social distance hang out, which I love.
I think you
You
have
can
to
see
get advanced reservations, but I think it
totally.
is
I
open.
remember that's what I did. Yeah, I love it. So we're almost done, you guys. I'm just gonna add one more little outline here. And this was the super detailed piece. So we are at 12:27. So just a reminder, you guys, if you guys need to leave for whatever reason, you will be receiving this in an email later. So we're probably going to go about 15 more minutes up to this point. So just kind of a heads up. So here's my piece, Lauren. Do you like it?
I love it. It's so pretty.
Thank you. I like it too. And this was kind of the more detailed piece for the kind of for the older kids, just because it requires a little bit more blending and just kind of a little bit more detail. So this is a really great practice piece, so you guys can work on your blending. So we're gonna move on to parrots. So here we
Yay, parrot.
go. Yay, let's see parrots. So this is actually a really fun one. Before we get started, I'm gonna pick a background, but this is a very specific one, and I want to give you guys a sample idea of what my parrot looks like. I know these aren't exactly Lauren reminded me these aren't the parrots that we see in our neighborhood. You can go ahead and pick a different parrot color if you'd like, because I know that Lauren is going to start talking to us about the awesome colors and the different options for parrots. But I'm going to go ahead and do this really nice background in the sky. So yeah, so take it away, Lauren.
Yeah, so exactly, Lonnie. Parrots are one of the most diversely colorful birds. And if you guys are from the Southern California area, if you guys are listening in or watching in, you might have seen the parrots that we have around here, and they're usually all green except for like maybe some purple or yellow or red on the tops of their head. And they're usually called Amazons, and so they're from South America and Mexico, and Central America, and uh, and they're probably the most common around here. We see those, and we see some kind of little parakeets, and but usually those are the wild ones. But a lot of the ones we might see at the zoo from all over the world, or people might have as pets, come in all different colors, like that red that Miss Loni showed you that she's going to do hers, or there's these ones called African Greys, and they're really cool and really big, and they are the best talkers. But Amazons are really fun because they are kind of like, they're maybe like a foot tall, and they are pretty, they definitely have personalities, and so we get them in, and they always end up making us laugh just because they're so loud, and they just are really fun. But a lot of people, the reason that they're here is because of the pet trade, right? So they're actually endangered down in their native lands. So there's laws being put into place and have been put into place about not stealing baby parrots out of their nests, because that's kind of what happened down there, is that the illegal pet trade was taking parrots out of their nests and selling them as pets, and so the wild population kind of just declined because of that, and now it's super booming here in their non-native area. But the reason that they're surviving so well is because we have all these non-native plants to go along with it, that they're just, eating all the fruits off of. So they're not competing really with any of the native wildlife, which is a good thing. They're just kind of filling in a niche that we've created for them by bringing in all these non-native plants as well. So even palm trees, they're not native to California, but the parrots love them, and same with all these different kinds of tropical fruit trees that aren't actually from Southern California, because Southern California is actually a desert, believe it or not.
So incredible.
Yeah, so they're doing great up here, which is awesome. And some people still do keep them as pets, and there's lots of different thoughts and feelings about that. But at Pasadena Humane, we tend to see them mostly as wild parrots. So whenever they come in, we try to release them back into the wild.
Do we get a lot of parrots at Pasadena Humane?
Yeah, we do actually, especially in the summer. I think 2 summers ago, during this crazy heat wave we had, there was like, I walked into our wildlife room and there was like just 20 cages covering the floor because it was so hot, and it was during fledgling season, which is the season where baby parrots and baby birds start jumping out of their nests and learning to fly. And all these fledgling parrots just like dropped out of their nests and were super dehydrated. And so so we ended up just giving them all, fluids and maybe some pain medication if they had any like bumps and bruises, and releasing them back to the wild. But yeah, we get them all the time. They're all over.
Lauren, how do we decide where they get actually released back into?
So what we usually try to do is, if it's just a fledgling or something if it's a young bird that doesn't need to be kept long term, we just want to reunite it back with its parents. So if even if you guys watching find a parrot on the ground that has maybe a short stumpy tail and looks kind of dirty, that's usually a good sign that it's a fledgling parrot, and you can leave them alone. Their parents are usually really close by watching over them. Or you can just put it back in the nest if you see the nest, using like a towel or something, because they can bite pretty bad. I've been bit before, and it's not pleasant, so definitely use gloves or a towel. But if they are injured, then you can definitely give us a call, and we work really closely with this San Diego parrot rehab center called SoCal Parrots, that are really good friends of ours, and they help us out with the long-term care of any parrots that come in with injuries.
Wow. Lauren, what do the colors signify? And before you answer that, actually, I wanted to let you guys know, you guys can do different designs on your wings if you'd like. I decided right now I'm just going to do three little parts here to separate the color, but you can do whatever you want. So anyway, sorry, Lauren, go ahead.
Well, that's okay. So the parrots, at least the ones in Pasadena, you can tell that the green is perfectly matched to the trees that they like to hang out in. So it's perfect camouflage for them. Even though when you're seeing them flying in the air, they look bright green and they have this red on their head, but it's perfectly matched to most of the trees that they like to hang out in. So that's part of why they have that color. And then with different kinds of parrots are found all over the world, so they're all in different kinds of tropical locations, so the colors tend to match them. And same with the peafowl, the brighter and more beautiful they are, they might be more attractive to their mate. So there's lots of different reasons why they can have different colors, but for the ones that are living around our area, it's definitely a good blending camouflage technique.
Yeah, that's so amazing that you said that, because that means that when they maybe originally got here, because you're saying the green matches our area, which is really interesting, I think, because and that means maybe did that evolve?
Well, I think that they flock to the trees that were
Matching.
that were part of their original environment, right? So
That's
we
so cool.
imported a lot of those trees from tropical areas like the Amazon and the Caribbean and South America and things like that. So most of these fruit trees that they're hanging out in aren't actually native fruit trees.
That's so interesting. I'm glad that you reminded me again that a lot of the stuff that is here wasn't even originally here. So they sort of all kind of meshed together and now they're like working harmoniously in our environment to survive. That's so cool.
Yeah, and the parrots, they'll eat the fruits and then they'll poop out the seeds and spread that tree into even more areas.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
They are so loud too, Lauren. Like what is that all about?
They're super vocal. You're right.
Oh.
That's another thing that people are kind of they're either on one end of the spectrum or the other as far as if they like having the parrots around, because people who live right next to a roost of them usually aren't super happy to be woken up at like 5 a.m. or the crack of dawn by by their loud squawking. Um,
Mhm.
but if you don't sleep right next to them, they're actually pretty fun to watch and to hear. I love just going out at like 7 o'clock or right before sundown, and usually I'll usually hear them first, and I'll hear them kind of squawking, and then I look up and I'll see a flock of them usually flying by, which is it's super satisfying to see. And they're, like you said, they're very vocal, so they're also very social creatures. They usually flock, and they could be flocks of up to 100 birds or more. Usually the ones I see are like maybe like 20 though. um, and they can live up to 50 years, so they're very much um, like family. They like have their like little family crew that they stay with for a long time. But those birds that I was talking about before that sometimes we'll send down to San Diego for long-term care, or that they are truly orphaned and so we have to hand raise them. We will then introduce them to a new flock, and usually they join right in, and so they're pretty adaptable in that way too, even if it's not the flock that they grew up with necessarily. They're usually pretty accepting of new members.
That's cool. That's
Hmm.
really interesting because you're saying that they're biters too, so I can
Yeah,
tell
well, yeah,
they're
they
aggressive.
can they can definitely pick on each other too, but I haven't seen too much of that. Usually it's just us humans getting picked on by the wild ones when we're trying to help them.
Yeah, exactly. That's when we try to get our business in their business and we just leave them alone.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly right, because they don't know that we're trying to help them, so it's very stressful for them to be brought into captivity. They see us as a predator, right? So we only want to bring in animals that truly, truly need our help. Otherwise, it's just way too stressful for them.
I agree. So the last thing I did, just as you were talking, Lauren, was I just did a little U or a little upside down, or yeah, sort of a C on his back for his eyes. I wanted him to be really simple. And I used a Sharpie because for my friends who maybe not, they don't have like a thin enough watercolor pen, sometimes it's easier to use a Sharpie. And you can also Sharpie the bottom of his mouth, so it's a little bit more perfect. This one is not as perfect as the other ones I've done, but it doesn't have to be. So anyways, so how do you like it, Lauren?
I love it. It's so colorful.
I like it too.
It looks like candy.
It does look like candy. So before we end this, I want to make sure you guys don't forget to sign your work. So I'm going to go ahead and sign mine right here at the bottom. That's my signature. And then let me sign my other one. So don't forget to sign your work. That's what the Sharpie's for too. And I know that Miss Michelle, I know we probably have about 5 more minutes if anybody has any questions from the audience about anything we talked about today.
So actually, Miss Loni, the first question is for you.
Oh.
Some of our viewers want to know how they can make the peacock more realistic.
Oh, okay. Well, what I would say is watercolor is a very difficult thing to use. It requires a lot of skill. And we're using watercolor for this because it's a lot quicker. I would say to use oil pastels or even like pencils, like colored pencils, using shading and also using even regular pencil and smearing it and working on more of a 3-dimensional piece. The stuff we're doing right now is very 1-dimensional, but if you add a lot more shading and detail work, if you add more detail into the plumage, this is super simple. But if you go into details, and I would say find a picture of a peacock that you really like, that's a real picture, and then maybe even use tracing paper and put it over, and then maybe put it up to a window. If you don't have a light box is a box that illuminates. So when it illuminates, you can put something over it and you can kind of trace over it and see it. But if you don't have that, which I didn't when I was a kid, I would just put my paper up to the window and tape it. And then I would put tracing paper over it. And then you can kind of at least get the silhouette of the designs. And then you can go ahead and just try to mimic the drawing using pencils and shading. So that's what I would say would give you a more realistic piece.
Do you have that first one you did, Loni? Because I felt like that one was a little bit more detailed.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, yeah.
This one, but this is Miss Loni doing it alone, not under like a camera. Like listening to music.
A lot more time.
Yeah, having more time, like just hanging out. As you can see, I did this, but this is not, super intense detail, but you could even go back with a pencil and do like cool detail work. You can always overlay. So I'm a mixed media artist, so I use a lot of different mediums. That's what that means. So I would go ahead and maybe do colored pencils on here. You could do, you can smear oil pastels and you can start to create more dimension. So totally, yeah. Thanks, whoever asked that.
And Miss Lauren, the next question is for you. How long do baby peafowl stay with their moms, and what is the lifespan of peafowl?
The babies will stay with their moms probably 3 to 4 months, and she'll protect them from predators. Kind of like we talked about, how they can be kind of aggressive. And their lifespan is, I have that right here. It's usually 10 to 25 years, but that's like in captivity, they'll be that long. But, one of the biggest things we talked about, kind of their natural predators, they don't have a lot here, but a lot of the injuries that we see from peafowl are due to cars. So when they're in the urban settings, their lifespan is a bit lower because they do have to worry about getting hit by cars, unfortunately. So when you and your parents are driving around, be sure you're paying good attention and making sure that the peafowls aren't jumping out in the streets.
Right, and that's all the questions I have from our viewers.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Miss Michelle, for running the back end for us. And thanks, Lauren, for reminding me to switch my screen because, yeah. I'm glad, or you guys wouldn't be watching this. So thank you guys again. And just a reminder that we have all our awesome fall programming coming up very, very soon. I think it's 2 more weeks. So we're moving everything, a lot of everything, to afternoons so that all my friends that are actually going back to school can do this. So I think most of our programming starts at 3:30, and we have our fall Zoom camp starting again, and we have Miss Lauren and I are going to be together like 2 times a month now for like the next 2 months doing these awesome watercolor programs. So please stay tuned and check out PasadenaHumane.org for anything else you need. And so that's it. I think sayonara and howdy, guys, and later. What do you have to say, Lauren? Yippee-ki-yay.
That's it.
That's
Thanks
it.
for coming.
Bye, Michelle. Bye, you guys.
Bye.